Let's go back to last night. The Warriors taking on the Clippers in Crypto.com Arena. There's Steph Curry. They started out all right, but...
This is my favorite shot. Look, he sees the 7-footer, he looks around.
Now you don't.
And now he's like, wait, did it go in? Yeah, we're good. Let's get back. That is absolutely nutty. And here, listen, it's Steph Curry. Don't play the drive. Don't play the drive. Force him down. The man was on fire.
26 points, 9 of 11 from the field in the first half. Let's roll on to the second half, Richard.
Yeah, well, you know what it is. The Clippers, this is that underdog team. T. Lue has them going. I don't know what award we can give Reggie Jackson. It's not most improved, but we got to give an award for a guy that just shows up and is like, listen, I'm going to carry this dismantled team on my back.
And we love comebacks.
Woo! And it wasn't just carry. I mean, this was a blowout, Richard.
Yes, the game was close, and all of a sudden, everybody just started getting in that work. And yes, this team is going to struggle without Draymond anchoring their defense, but the Clippers don't care about that.
No, they do not. Here is Steve Kerr after the Warriors' loss.
I know we're the #1 defense in the league, but we're not right now. You know, those numbers are inflated by, what we did early in the season. Over the last 7-8 games, we're probably, bottom 5, if not dead last in the league in defensive rating. So it's up to us. We're going to have to find the effort, the communication, the connection to get back to doing the things we were doing earlier in the season.
Kendra Andrews joins us now on NBA Today. And Kendra, this Warriors team, they've now lost 3 of 4. And you just heard Steve Kerr say that the defense has been a concern. So what conversations are being had about how to address their defensive issues?
Well, Malika, Steve Kerr says that every single night, the defense, the issue is something different. One night, it's box outs. The next, back cuts. The next, transition defense. Through the first 2 weeks of February, the Warriors are 23rd in the league in points allowed in the paint. Before that, they were #1. Of course, Draymond Green's absence is a huge reason for that. He also says, Steve says, it's a lack of communication and a lack of effort. Steph Curry agreed with that, and he said, look, against the Clippers, we couldn't do anything right. We couldn't contain them in the paint. We couldn't contain their drives. They were kicking out to the open shooter. We were missing our switches. We couldn't get a rebound. The laundry list went on and on. But Steph said, look, the solution to this is we have to focus on our physicality. Because the team is without Draymond, because they're without James Wiseman, Kevon Looney is their only true center. They're severely undersized. So if they can just focus on being physical, hopefully at least, that will help address that laundry list of issues.
Right, and you mentioned it. A big part of the Warriors' defensive struggles has been a lack of size down low. Draymond Green, James Wiseman, they're both out of the mix due to injury, but I saw some of your reporting. Could they maybe be getting some help sometime soon?
Big news for the Warriors is that James Wiseman is participating in a 5-on-5 scrimmage today in San Francisco, I'm told. The scrimmage is going to consist with some other young players, Gary Payton II, Chris Chiozza, a few coaches, a few training staff members. This is really big, Malika, because this is the first 5-on-5 scrimmage he's done. Exactly 1 week ago, he had a 3-on-3 scrimmage, which was his first contact work since April 2021. So this could be the final stage of that ramp-up period, but we don't have a clear timetable. We also don't have a clear timetable on Draymond Green. A couple weeks ago, he said he hopes to be back 2 to 3 weeks after the All-Star break, which is coming up. But he said, look, if that doesn't happen, that doesn't mean that anything went wrong. He's just being very cautious because it is a back injury.
This could be the start of something new. But with James Wiseman, one of the reasons why I'm like, oh, yes, this could be something is, as you and I talked about, every single time he made progress, it seemed like that, and he had a setback. And so this time, he's actually able to trek along. Kendra Andrews, thank you so much for joining us. All right, so over the last 7 games, the Warriors, they're allowing an average of more than 113 points per game. So they rank 22nd in league defensive efficiency since February 1st. But what makes this wild is that they ended January with the best defensive efficiency in the league. So, Richard, how much of an obstacle will the Warriors' defensive struggles be in their quest for another ring here?
Well, look, just flat out, if they do not have a healthy Draymond, they cannot win the championship. That is just
point
flat
blank
out.
Period.
Point blank period. That's it. I think Draymond knows it. I think they know it. And so I think the league knows that. And so there is a gaping hole in their defense when Draymond's there, just like you wouldn't judge the Utah Jazz without Rudy Gobert. There are great defensive players that just mean everything to their team, and even Steve said it. Without those early 10, 15, 20 games, we would not be #1 ranked defense. That's what's carrying us right now, and we were so efficient that since we've dropped off, we're still that, and people are comparing us to that, and that's not who we are.
Yeah, I agree. Draymond Green is the anchor of that defense, and it's been remarkable what he's been able to do considering that he's 6'6", 6'7", holding down the center position. But I appreciate... Yeah, but we're hip fans, so we got to give him 6'6". We got to give him that basketball inch. But I do appreciate what Kendra said in the fact that they are hopefully getting help soon because they know they need it. They know Draymond's timetable might be a little bit longer than expected, which means the urgency is now to get James Wiseman back, and he can truly help. I would say overall, the Warriors, though, Richard, they're not a one-trick pony when it comes to defense, the same way they're not a one-trick pony when it comes to offense. You can find ways to win and play inspiring basketball. Losing to the Clippers after having a head start is very uncharacteristic of a Steve Kerr-led Warriors team. You build up that lead or you get that lead back in the second half, and then you ride that through. So I think there are points where they can realize, all right, when Draymond comes back, we're still that top defensive team. When Draymond comes back, we found additional ways to get him rest and run this offense. This is just a challenge that they'll just have to overcome.
Zach, what's your level of concern here?
Not that concerned unless it comes out that Draymond Green's having setbacks in his rehab. Draymond was the consensus defensive player of the year by a lot before he got injured. You take that away from any team, they're going to struggle. We're also talking about a really good team with big ambitions, and we're in the doldrums of the season. We're coming up on the All-Star break. Everybody wants a break. The Suns have kind of run away with the #1 seed. Not uncommon to see a team play with a little less juice in those circumstances. And this team needs a lot of juice to rebound. That was one of the biggest questions people had about the Warriors playing small with Draymond at center. Could they hold their own on the glass? They were a top 5 defensive rebounding team at the start of the season. They've slipped and slipped and slipped. That, to me, is like effort, engagement. They can get that back when and if Draymond comes back healthy. So not concerned in the slightest. I would be concerned about the Suns being incredible and basically never losing basketball games. That would be my concern as a Warriors fan, but not the defense.
Well, you mentioned something, Zach, and I want to ask you, Richard. You know, this is actually All-Star week. I know we're coming off a Super Bowl week, so we all feeling some type of way. But, Richard, where would your mind be if, All-Star was in a couple days?
If I was who?
The Warriors, any team out there right now?
I think this is a good break. I think for every team, like Zach said, you're in the middle of this kind of dog days of the season. Everybody knows
of February?
That. Yes, this is the dog days. Like, listen, between game 45 and about 65, those are the hardest games. Everyone's banged up. No one's healthy. You're tired. Some of your guys might be, 1, 2, 3 in Cancun. Everyone's trying to get to the All-Star break. But I will say this: the last 3 games before the All-Star break and the first 3 games out are some of the most important games you will play in the entire season, because some teams go on break early so you can sneak some wins, and some teams don't come back from break for a few games so you can sneak some wins. So maybe that's the case here in this win. The Warriors are already on the break. They're exhausting because, look, you know what? It's a long season, and this team is planning on playing till June.
But it is rare to see a team who finishes outside the top 10 in defense be able to win a championship. And so I do expect them to turn it back up again, right? But you can't rely too much on Draymond Green without that timeline still, because Draymond, he said he's headed to All-Star. He's going to take part in all the festivities with NBA 75. He's not actually able to play, and we still don't have a concrete timeline for his return. But still ahead on NBA Today, we're going back to the big story of the day with Tim Bontemps and Nick Friedel, who you see there. We're going to have live reports from Philly and Brooklyn in just a bit. Stay tuned.
Nick cheesing.
From Los Angeles.
We are back on NBA Today, and we're joined by our Tim Bontemps and Nick Friedel. And Nick, I want to start with you here because you were in attendance for Ben Simmons' presser earlier today. What are the Nets saying about their confidence in Simmons' availability to be ready to play?
Malika, they're feeling great about where Simmons is at because they think he's in a great headspace, and they think physically after a couple weeks he's going to be right where we're used to seeing him. And just a little while ago, I asked him what he feels like getting ready to play with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving.
I think it's going to be scary. Having those guys running alongside me, there's multiple different weapons on the floor. And I think at the pace we want to play at, it's going to be unreal.
You guys do have a game in Philly in a couple of weeks. Do you think you can be ready for that? Physically, mentally, I imagine it's
I hope so.
Malika, the key to remember here is the Nets feel like Simmons is coming into a great locker room for his personality. He has a long-standing relationship with Kyrie and an even longer one with Patty Mills. And the Nets believe those 3 can help get him to a place where he feels like it's fun to come to work again on top of what he'll do on the floor.
Well, and there certainly are a lot of expectations for this Nets team on the floor, so he's going to need that support system. Nick Friedel, thank you so much. Tim, you're in Philadelphia, and you were watching the James Harden press conference, and he addressed the media just a short time after Simmons. What was it about the Sixers that Harden found so attractive?
Well, when Nick is talking about the familiarity that Ben Simmons has with Patty Mills and Kyrie Irving, James Harden was talking about the familiarity he has with Daryl Morey and president of the franchise here in Philadelphia, Tad Brown. Remember, both of those guys were with Harden for a long time with the Houston Rockets. They built that franchise up into a championship contender for several seasons. And Harden talked a lot about the fact that he feels confident that everyone here is aligned and pushing in the same direction. And I think when you look at what's happened in Brooklyn over the last couple months, I think it was a pretty telling statement from him on that front. Now, he also talked about the fact that he thinks he can really partner well with Joel Embiid. He downplayed any fit issues there. And ultimately, he echoed what Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey have both said. This trade gives the Philadelphia 76ers a legitimate chance to win a championship. And now everyone here says all they have to do is go win one.
Well, yesterday we found out that James Harden has been ruled out through the All-Star break, but he said that his hamstring feels, quote, really good. So what's the plan to get him back on the court?
Well, I watched Harden work out for about 45 minutes after shoot-around this morning, Malika. He was going through shooting drills with assistant coach Sam Cassell, and he looked pretty good. And he said he feels really good, and the plan is to ramp up over this next week after he missed the final few games of his Nets tenure with this hamstring tightness. And he wants to be able to go full bore when they come out of the All-Star break and play in Minnesota against the Timberwolves next Friday. But Harden made it clear that over the final 24 games this season, he wants to hit the ground running and try to get this team fully on the same page, where they clearly have a lot of work to do to try to get to those championship expectations with so little time to gel on the court before the playoffs.
Well, he's been in that scenario before, just last season. But both of these teams, the expectations are so high, and they could be on a collision course and have to go through each other to get to that ultimate goal. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Really appreciate you hopping on NBA Today. So here's our NBA Wednesday doubleheader on ESPN and the app. The new look Nets, they are facing the Knicks at Madison Square Garden at 7:30 Eastern. And then it's our West Coast primetime game with Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz at Crypto.com Arena, taking on LeBron, AD, and the Lakers. Our coverage starts with NBA Countdown at 7 Eastern. Still ahead on NBA Today with Ben Simmons, the Nets, they have a five-man lineup that would make history. We'll explain when we return. Jefferson, I'm Malika Andrews. We'll be joined by Zach Lowe momentarily, but we start in Brooklyn, where Ben Simmons sat down to address reporters for the first time since the Eastern Conference semifinals. And Simmons' absence from the public eye, it left many questions. So here's how they answered them.
It wasn't about the basketball. It wasn't about the money, anything like that. I want to be who I am and get back to, playing basketball at that level and, being myself.
There are going to be some people out there that are skeptical, that are going to say that James Harden was faking his hamstring injury and that you were maybe faking your mental health issues. What do you have to say to those people?
They should be happy I'm smiling, honestly. I've had some dark times over these last 6 months, and I'm just happy to be in this situation with this team.
What was the communication like with Philadelphia on the way out? And as you look back, is there anything in order to kind of move forward that you would have done differently?
I think the communication, I spoke to Elton, I spoke to Josh Harris, they called me, I spoke to Doc Rivers, and I spoke to Tobias. There was a couple other places I spoke to about it. And, they were happy, for me.
Did you speak with Joel?
No, I did not.
All right, so I want to make one thing very clear here. We're not here to analyze Ben Simmons' mental health issues. Questioning the validity of that without more information, it just doesn't pass my fairness and accuracy sniff test. But what I do want to go to is the last thing we heard. I asked Ben whether or not he would have changed anything about how he handled his exit in Philadelphia, and he didn't answer the question, but he did say he didn't speak with the franchise star Joel Embiid upon his exit. So there's a lot of big personalities here, Richard, and couple that with big expectations in Brooklyn. Who is the driving force to make this Brooklyn team work on the court and in the locker room?
Well, look, unfairly, and this is just always the way it's going to go. And I was fortunate to play with Steph and Bron and Dirk and Jason Kidd. There's just tons of stars. This is going to fall on Kevin Durant. Whether he likes it or not, it is his job. He is the best player. He is the person that, look, his legacy is solidified, but he is the person that everyone is going to look at in this organization as a leader. Whether you, him, the team likes it or not. So everything will be judged by how he can bring everyone together, make Ben Simmons feel welcome, incorporate Kyrie, get all the other players going, and on top of that, go be a top 3 player in the world. So it all falls on him.
But Janae, here's the thing. On the court, I agree. Kevin Durant, there's no question he's the leader of this team. And in the locker room, he surely should be one of the most respected voices just based on his resume. But can he be?
He should be able to be. And I do think that this transfer of powers, Ben Simmons to Brooklyn and James Harden to Philly, is kind of a wake-up call saying, all right, we have to make this rock. I agree with you, Richard. Kevin Durant is the key piece in the NBA in general. He's the one that, what is it? I'm sorry, I haven't watched Endgame, but he's Thanos or whatever. He has the
Why would you reference something that you haven't watched?
Well, you get what I'm saying. He's he's everyone else's, thank you, everyone else's kryptonite, right? He goes out there, he can get a bucket on anybody in the NBA based on his skill set. So I do think it falls on KD to bring this team as currently now constructed as of, what was it, since the trade deadline?
Right.
4 days ago. But, overall, I do think it's going to be some acclimation for Ben Simmons. It will be an adjustment for him, figuring out how to play home and away without Kyrie Irving half of the time. But it does fall on KD's shoulder because we all know whether Kyrie is available, whether Ben Simmons is available, KD can win a championship, and we're waiting to see him do it by himself or collectively with these guys.
Zach, what do you think?
It's Durant. They're right. It comes back to Durant. He's arguably the best player in the NBA. He's the player that ties this disparate, weird, changing roster together. He's a 7-footer who can defend the rim, shoot threes, do a little bit of everything on offense. And if Ben Simmons is going to become this different kind of player that we all envision him as, the Draymond Green of the Brooklyn Nets, a lot of that is going to be because Kevin Durant exercises control of the ball, tells people this is how it's going to be, this is the kind of team we are. They're going to need his defense, they're going to need his leadership. So yeah, fair or not, it comes back to KD. Kyrie's only there half the time, and he's the superstar player.
Well, there you go. What is it, Richard, if you stay petty, you don't have to get petty?
Damn right. Let's go. We got some petty stuff lined up.
Is this inherently petty that just under an hour later, about 100 miles southwest of Brooklyn, James Harden, he took the mic for his first press conference since the trade.
Interesting timing.
And Harden, right? So Harden was reluctant to address the situation with the Nets, but he was pretty clear about one thing. He's where he wanted to be. Take a listen.
Originally, when I was going through everything I was going through, in Houston, Philly was my first choice. It just didn't happen.
Is the uncertainty around Kyrie's situation this year, did that play a part in how things developed over the past couple of months for you?
Very minimal, honestly. Obviously, me and Kyrie are really good friends. Whatever he was going through or is still going through, that's his personal preference. But it definitely did impact the team. For me, it made sense, man. It's a time where I needed to be, around guys that I know that want to win and know that are willing to do whatever it takes to win. And the structure here is unbelievable.
We've heard the word championship being thrown around here for the last half hour. Pairing you and Joel, do you see that being possible? I'm sure you see that being possible this year.
Hell
what will
yeah.
it take to make it happen? Was that a hell yeah?
Hell yeah.
All right, so there's a whole lot there. Richard, just what's your reaction to what we just heard?
Well, first of all, I understand he's kind of contradicting himself. Well, Kai wasn't. Look, Kai has his own thing, and I respect that. But also, it did impact the team. See, it's not a perfect science in sports about dodging questions. Because
you're pretty good at it.
I'm very good at it, but you can't plead the fifth. You can't plead the fifth here in this thing. I don't like either of you two right now. Zach, you're still my guy. So when he can't do those things, he's just going to say every political answer, and I like it. James is like, like, hey, it did affect the team. That's on Kyrie, but this is where I want to be. This is why I want to focus on, and that's probably the best answer we're going to get out of him.
And if you think about it, he is right to some degree in the fact that, all right, Philly was probably his first choice. Fit-wise, the embodiment of the city. He's coming from Houston to Philly. Both are tough environments, where you have to play and, the fans celebrate you. And I feel like we all saw that in our heads and we're like, okay, James can really fit there. That's like his vibe. But I think what we've seen through the past, year or so is that the reality is championship was his first choice. Meaning tag teaming with Kyrie and KD would provide what he actually wanted first and foremost above even Philly. And that's why we had that big three experiment where it was for a short time the best offense we had ever seen. But the reality, the fit in Philly overall makes sense for James Harden as a point guard, someone that can shoot, that's great offensively, paired with one of the best big men in the game.
Oh, I want to get to that more in just a second. But Zach, first, your just initial reaction to what we heard from James Harden.
Can you imagine being the Brooklyn Nets? They must feel like they were just used as a middleman between the Rockets and the Sixers and were plundered of their young players and draft picks in the process. Obviously, they recovered. They got a great player in Ben Simmons, but it must be a really, really icy feeling right now for the Nets. Beyond that, I agree on two things. Number one, winning, if he's chasing winning, whatever, the Nets with a full-time Kyrie Irving, with Joe Harris, obviously with Durant and James Harden, were the best team in the NBA, and I'm not even sure it was close. Obviously, that team fell apart. Number two, that hell yeah, that's a fun hell yeah, because I agree with him. I think the Sixers can now win it all this year. They wouldn't be my pick. They're not the favorites, but they have enough in-house to make a real run, which is rare when you make a big in-season trade like that, to have enough left over to really go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, just a reminder, we're only about 13 months removed from James Harden being introduced as a Net. I was listening back to his introductory press conference as a Brooklyn Net and him talking about, remember when he left, he was saying, oh, well, I didn't feel like I could win there. Now I'm in a better situation. And Sean Mark said, oh, we don't feel like we leveraged our entire future by making this deal, as in the James Harden deal, but we have a window and we need to capitalize on it. Obviously, they didn't. But Chiney, does James Harden now have a better chance to win with this Sixers roster than he did with the Big Three in Brooklyn?
Yes, he does. And that's not a controversial answer because guess what? The Sixers roster, most of the players are available for most of the games, especially the playoffs. And that's the difference when it comes to the playoffs. Availability, health, that's number one. Joel Embiid has been healthier, and that's why we're seeing him each year get closer, an inch closer to being an MVP candidate right now. I think a lot of people think that he's that guy. Now, James, health has been the name of the game for him in the playoffs, not even just when it came to last season and, with the Brooklyn Nets, but it also lingered, and he fought against that narrative in Houston. So will those two star players be available? And also your teammates? That puts you in a great position as opposed to what they were dealing with Kyrie and KD being out currently.
Okay, so this is to add to what she is saying. The best situation for James to win a championship is to be in Brooklyn with a healthy team and with Kyrie playing full-time. He is not playing full-time. So if you were to look at today, does he have a better chance of winning a championship with Joel Embiid, or does he have a better chance of winning a championship with the Brooklyn squad? It's definitely Philly. So, this is, and that's what's frustrating is that, to what Zach said, the entire team, it was one of the greatest offenses we've ever seen. They would be, without a doubt, the best team in the league if Kyrie was 100% playing and Kevin Durant is healthy. That is not the reality. What is the reality is Joel Embiid is probably the MVP favorite right now. Philly is balling, and now he gets to go add to what they've been doing.
All right, period, Zach.
To underscore RJ's point, I'll say this. I heard from a number of front office people and coaches, Eastern Conference playoff teams yesterday, who said two things. Number one, not great for us that Brooklyn and Philly both got better at the trade deadline with this trade, but whew, sigh of relief that Brooklyn team didn't work out and broke out, because that team, we were looking at that team like, what the heck are we going to do with them for the next 3 or 4 years?
Nothing.
So really both can be true. Today, Philly has a better chance of winning, but that's because the Nets team, as we thought it would exist, did not exist, broke apart amid infighting, chemistry, some of which was James Harden's doing, some of which wasn't.
Right. Well, and you said that they're, what did you say, the greatest theoretical team in NBA history? I mean, that's what they're going to go down in the history books as, the greatest theoretical team, because my goodness, the glimpses we got, amazing, but It came and it went. We will dive into this much more on NBA Today. Plenty more reaction and live reports from both New York and Philadelphia. We will check in with our reporters who 163 points and made only 3 3-pointers. So over the last 30 seasons, only Shaquille O'Neal has scored more points over a 7-game span while making 5 or fewer 3-pointers. So, Chiney, how is DeRozan scoring all these points?
Cheat sheet time. You know what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing DeMar DeRozan's greatest season of basketball. Chi-Town, where you at? He is averaging a career-high 28 points per game this year, and he's doing it pretty much without threes. So I am here to tell you that DeMar DeRozan is the exception to the lost art of the mid-range. Here's what you need to know. Let's start with this graphic via one of our favorite nerds, Producer Shorts. Check this out right here. This is DeMar DeRozan's shot chart from so far this season. Red spots mean hot spots. DeMar leads the league in mid-range points per game, and his go-to shot right here, the extended free throw line. He's made 138 shots from that spot, 53% or so from the field. So you know what time it is, Richard?
Oh, let's go. Video time?
There we go. Baby.
Hit him
Watch
with
him
it.
in flow to get to the mid-range to the free throw line extended, Richard. Watch the shake and bake right here.
Well, and at this point in time, you just got to give him a little bit space. You know he's a 3, but he's a master at separation. Sidestep, backstep, all of them.
No, sidestep, backstep. No travels. Okay, this is ridiculous. This is how he's been in his bag. See this matchup right here? Let's look at the size, right? All right, you've got the baseline. This is the size advantage. You've got Patrick
Whose
Beverly.
baby is that?
Patrick Beverly. You got the double coming. Look at that tough jumper.
You can't contest that. Look at the elevation over the top. And look what he does. He too little. Rock the baby.
Too small, but I love it when you use the baseline because you know the help defense can't come from that way. Oh, and by the way, DeMar has made 310 off the dribble mid-range jumpers so far this year. That is the most in any season since Second Spectrum began tracking 9 years ago. So DeMar DeRozan is officially the lone mid-ranger. You like that?
I love it. I dig it. Can we talk about a first-team All-NBA for our guy this year?
I like that.
He's never made first-team All-NBA. This could be the year.
It better be.
I think we need to get one of those like little hats.
Yeah.
The black ones. You know the five.
I know.
Yeah, it's Blazing Saddles. All right. After another incredible performance in Chicago, DeRozan is averaging more than 35 points per game in the month of February. That's second only to Mavericks' Luka Doncic. In his performance, it begs the question: how, Zach, does DeRozan stack up in the MVP race?
Man, DeMar in the clutch. He's maybe been the best clutch player in the league this season. Last 5 minutes of close games, number 2 in points. He's shooting 54%, 16 assists to just 2 turnovers. Incredible. As for MVP, it's hard to make a ballot. You only get 5 spots. I think the top 3 right now are Embiid, Jokic, Giannis in some order, and DeMar is probably 4 or 5. But look, the names that are in competition for those 2 spots: Ja Morant, Stephen Curry, Luka Doncic, Chris Paul, Devin Booker. Like, it's hard to make an MVP ballot. Right now, he's got an argument for 4th. I don't think I could put him higher than that.
I would 100% agree, but that's why I mentioned first-team All-NBA. I think right now the peak for him, he has never made first-team All-NBA, and he has been on teams that were the number 1 seed going into the postseason when he was in Toronto. So he's been on great teams before with great performances, multi-time All-Star. But I think right now DeMar DeRozan is in place to be that first-team All-NBA guy. MVP is such a tough thing to crack, but first team, let's go.
You know what's interesting? A lot of times when you get older in the league, you try to reinvent yourself. Maybe the athleticism is fading. Maybe sometimes you're realizing you can't get jiggy with it on the perimeter, so you start passing and screening to get your shot off. I like that DeMar DeRozan has perfected his game. Like, normally, last night, what did he have? 40 and 0 threes. Like, he has not taken the bait of what the NBA said was, well, if you want to be great, if you want to put up points, you have to shoot threes. Instead, he's perfected his mid-range. I mean, he's led the league, I believe, in that